Okay, well, let's kick off all, and we'll let others join as they may. And we know it is perhaps a smaller crowd, but we're going to have a much more fulsome crowd for the summit. And I think the goal of today too is really just to give everybody the opportunity, especially for the speakers, an opportunity to say hello and to give a bit more of a background on themselves, professionally, personally, if you'd like, and likewise, I think just intending of what we'll cover for the summit with your presentation, and being able to give a little bit of an overview, the title, description, just enough that maybe gets people excited a bit for what is to come in November. Um, we've got all the speakers, I think, for the most part, represented today. I might have to cover off for a couple that have sent their regrets with other meetings and commitments, but we'll do our best to kind of get through the full agenda here. And we do have it in that sequence. So as you see the agenda on the website for the summit on that Wednesday, the 27th of November, we will have that be reflected with the sequence that we go through the introductions today. So I'm Ben Joseas. I work with the Lean Institute Africa. We also have Sebwith Bajane on the call. He works with the Institute likewise, and Samantha will be joining us shortly. So it's great to have you. We are truly excited for this summit. It's the first time, I think, since pre-COVID that we've had an in-person summit. So 2019 was our last one. 5 years is way too long to go. So we recognize that. I know you have recognized that. And that's the goal with having this coming up, is to get everybody back together and be able to start sharing these ideas more in person. And we do have a couple of international speakers joining us. Mike Joseas, my father, you'll hear from him momentarily. Honored to have him come over and join us. Likewise, John Velma from Denmark. He just did tell me it's a holiday in Denmark, so I want to respect that for him. He may not be able to join us on this call, but he'll be coming down likewise and sharing his insights from case studies with Lego, Maersk, and otherwise some great global companies using the TWY training model. So I'll speak on his behalf today. And then likewise, we have such a great slate of speakers from South Africa, and really excited to hear from several of you here today and your stories and case studies. I like to tell people too, you can probably hear my American accent. I'm not South African by birth, but I'm now a permanent resident there. I have a deep heart for the country, and I'm very glad to be some small part of its growth and development. But it's a tough place to do business. And I think you realize that there are many headwinds that we face economically, socially, et cetera. But I really am impressed every day seeing the level of resilience, the level of effort that it takes, and really the heart for people that we all share. And I think that's what brings us together for summits like these. So all that to say, hopefully just an introduction and brief overview of what is to come. Let's get into it as well. And Mike, if you're able to speak, I know you have joined mobily, but you're going to be first up for our summit with an 8:30 a.m. keynote on the 27th of November. And likewise, you'll be hosting a full day workshop on the 26th of November, also at the UCT Graduate School of Business. Do you mind, Mike, if you're able to just come on and tell us a little bit about what you'll cover both with the workshop and with your keynote?
Fantastic. Thank you, Ben. And thank you all for joining. And I'm privileged and honored to come to South Africa in November. So looking forward to it. I had my upbringing, so to speak, at Toyota in Kentucky. The Toyota plant in Kentucky is the largest Toyota plant in the world and the first wholly owned Toyota plant anywhere in the world outside of Japan. So in 1987, I was the 201st employee as supervisor. So I had Japanese training as a supervisor, as a manager, as an executive. And then I rotated to human resources as an executive, and again, had personal Japanese trainers all along the way. So Toyota had great success in this company. I think now in this country, I think up to about 50 or 60,000 employees now in Toyota North America. And as we were getting into it in the 90s and things, people started, I don't know, copying Toyota or whatever, many books being written. And they were doing it incorrectly or ineffectively. And even in the 2000s, I saw different surveys on disappointment with lean culture, or I should say lean transformations or lean implementations. And so I wrote the book in 2007, Toyota Culture, because people were missing the culture. People were missing the people part. They were copying tools and getting some small gains, some quick wins, some low hanging fruit, but they weren't getting a sustained improvement in their performance. And so I wrote that book, and so that book changed my life, and got to travel around the world and meet many different organizations and many different companies and countries, and to kind of become my niche to talk about this culture and to teach companies how to leverage their culture in order to get the business results that are needed. And so that'll be the gist of my conversation, both for the hour and then go deeper, obviously, in the full day workshop. Now last week I had a keynote in Mexico on lean and digital trends, and so I'm working that in now, and so maybe even into the title, because that is a big thing on people's mind right now, and that's a big activity. So whether it be what we call technology transformation, digital transformation, which includes automation, which includes AI, companies are looking to that and gaining from that on their performance and their operational excellence. And the question is, how does lean integrate with that, and how is it lean or is it digital? And of course, it's a combination of both. And that's will be the gist of my conversation, because I have a slide in front of me from last week that says a third of organizations going through technology transformation are not happy and not getting the impact that they expected. It goes on to say that through surveys with these companies, what has been missing is a focus on the people side of technology. So again, the missing link for people on their lean transformations was people, and now currently the missing link with people on their digital and technology transformations is people. So the question becomes, again, how do we integrate both? How do we have this integration in order to achieve the behaviors we need with our people and the results that we need for our business? That will be my discussion.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And we'll open the floor briefly for any questions just with each speaker that comes through today. And John, maybe you can help me with the chat, just monitor that. But keep those in mind. And then if we don't answer them now, we'll definitely answer them ahead of the summit here in about a month. So thank you, Mike, for that. Were there any questions for Mike before we move on? Well, good if not. Very good. Let's move on to our next speaker. He's not able to join us today, but we're very excited to have Jake Morris, who is the Chief Operating Officer of BMA, Benchmarking and Manufacturing Analysts. And they have offices in Cape Town, also in Durban, and they work closely with TWIMS, which is a collaboration with Gibbs, and likewise the Twyla Wessels Institute of Management Studies over in Kloof in Durban. And they have really been doing some great work on this front of analysis in the vein of how do we take the industry forward, and they work across many different sectors: clothing and textiles, automotive, chemicals, furniture. They represent several industry clusters of companies, and we're very excited to have Jake join us to speak on this topic: why South Africa's future depends on lean manufacturing. And we were strategic in putting him just after my father's presentation, because I think that'll give a great overview, as you hear, on the people side, the culture, but then likewise, we need to talk about the local context of South Africa and why there's such a high need for that as well. And Jake did just publish a great article in Business Day around the title, "Despite the Data, South Africa Still Needs Manufacturing." So it's not just an argument, a qualitative argument. He has some very deep quantitative measures that he'll use to support his basis for the article and for the keynote likewise. So very excited to have Jake, and he sends his apologies not able to join us today, but looking forward to being there in November. Very good. So let's move into our first breakout session of the Summit Day here in November. Our first presenter we'll hear from today's webinar is Dr. Greg Bellairs from the Western Cape Blood Services. We're very excited to have you, Dr. Greg, to join us at the summit. We've heard great things. I think several of us might have visited your facilities and seen what you're doing with these lean tools and the philosophy. So if you don't mind, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and likewise your presentation on implementing continuous improvement at a non-competitive, non-profit entity, and why we should bother with that.
Okay, yeah, so just checking, can you all hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Great. And I finally got my video working, so that's helpful. Yeah, so thank you for the invitation, first of all, and good to meet everyone who's on this meeting. Yeah, the title of my talk is, as you've mentioned, Implementing CI at a Non-Competitive Non-Profit Entity, Why Bother? And really, yeah, my background in the blood service is that I've been here since 2002. And my first exposure to the principles of lean was, in fact, when I did the MBA at UCT Graduate School of Business in 1999 and 2000. And that's where one of the modules that I chose was presented by Norman Fall, who is probably known to some of the people. So once I joined the blood service, for a long time, you know, just got used to the way things ran, and I was in a junior management position. But when I became an executive, I obviously became more interested in implementing continuous improvement, which is what we did starting a few years ago. What I plan to cover in my talk is the first minute or two or three, just a very brief background on what Western Cape Blood Service does, because, you know, it's a unique industry and what we do will not intuitively be well understood by everyone. And then I will cover our reasons for implementing lean. It's not common for entities that have no competition and are monopolies in a given area to implement lean, because my thesis is, why bother? If you just carry on as you are, you're still going to be successful. But we mainly did it really to improve efficiencies, control costs, keep our tariffs as low as possible for our customers, because they also have no choice in whom they buy products from in the Western Cape. Obviously, to reduce waste, and then also to aspire to have a world-class environment, which helps my staff, and it helps a lot of our workflows just to do everything as best possible. Then I'll go on to the way in which we implemented lean or continuous improvement. Basically, it was a modular approach assisted with a consultant, and appointing champions, lots of education and training, and then ongoing measurement of maturity through the different modules. And then the last part of my talk, I'll cover some of the successes we've had, mainly focusing on where we've managed to reduce our headcount, yet still be doing more work, the way we manage projects, and also maybe some learnings from improved teamwork. And then also, you know, one of the challenges we faced was that of resistance to change. At this time we started, this company was 80-something years old, with a lot of people who've worked most of their working lives here. So there's an element of change resistant and how we manage to get people to buy into change. And that's essentially it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that, Greg, and truly excited to hear your story and hear a bit more about this. And thank you for the good work that you and the organization continue to do. Any questions, we'll answer those, and otherwise we'll capture them and maybe hit them at the end. Thank you for that introduction. Let's move on. I believe, Aisha, you're with us today representing the Western Cape government. And I think everyone's going to be excited to hear from you and the good work you're doing with your team. And your topic is around the red tape reduction unit and some of the case studies and successes you've had. So if you don't mind, we'll hear from you.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Aisha Augustus from the Red Tape Reduction Unit within Economic Development and Tourism. And strangely enough, my background is actually communication, public management, and transformation. And when I joined the Red Tape Reduction Unit a few years back, there was this huge opportunity to really push lean management within the current context of just coming out of COVID and a declining economy. So through the years, we've managed to really build up, you know, a really good case study in terms of our approach and how we are implementing lean management. So in terms of my presentation, I will actually be taking the people approach. And you actually mentioned it, Ben, a little bit earlier, you know, this element about people. And my presentation is also around building capability with lean management to reduce waste, improve efficiency, and create a culture of ease of doing business. And that will be from a Western Cape government approach and case study. So what you can expect out of our presentation, I'll be talking about our big why, our journey, but most of all, our vision to become the easiest place to do business in Africa by 2035. And we have this audacious goal as the Western Cape government, and lean management has been identified as one of those capabilities to really remove waste and grow our economy. I'll also be talking about our Western Cape government case study, and I'll be sharing some lessons that has come through that, especially our partnership with Heritage Western Cape. And then I'll also be talking about, our journey ahead and the importance of partnerships. What we've realized through the years is that, we cannot do this in isolation, especially in terms of the advocacy within a public institution. Some highlights that you can expect. We'll be sharing some of our successes, especially from the people side, the mind shift, the way that officials have said it allowed them to really analyze and critically think around process improvements within the Western Cape. Sorry? Okay. I'll be sharing some of our lessons. And we've had many lessons, and I'm really excited, I think, especially once again from a Western Cape government perspective, to share that. I mean, we are in no means perfect. We're figuring this out, but it's a journey. And then one more thing I'll be speaking about is the link between building lean management capabilities, reducing waste, and growing the economy. We found that it was really essential to provide public officials not only with the capability, but also the mindset to look at business as a citizen. So within economic development, our mandate and our vision is businesses, and how are we constantly making it easier for businesses to operate, sustain revenue, but especially within processes that businesses experience from a Western Cape government perspective. And then just lastly, I'll also be sharing, the importance of psychological safety when it comes to organizations wanting to continuously improve, and how are organizations doing that. And I'll also be sharing an example from Heritage Western Cape and how they've managed to cultivate that culture for lean management to really land within the organization. So I'm really excited to be sharing those lessons.
Thank you, Aisha. That's awesome to hear. And several points you touched on there, but I mentioned earlier the resilience of South Africans and those of us here in the Western Cape, but also optimism and a positive outlook. And you shared some of that. So very excited to hear from you and the work that you're doing. And it's also interesting to hear you mention psychological safety. That was a point. I'm in Kentucky actually with my father as we speak. And we did a workshop this past week with different business leaders. And we had Mark Graven join us. Actually, I'm using his book at the moment right in front of me. And it's about the mistakes that make us and how to cultivate a culture of learning and innovation, and speaks a lot about psychological safety. He's done a lot of good work with healthcare and I believe some government as well. So I'm excited to hear how that's translating to your context and also how that's being adopted by other companies and organizations. So thank you, Aisha, and really excited to have you join us at the summit. Very good. Let's keep moving through. We'll hit a lunch break for the purposes of the summit, but then when we come back from lunch at the 1 p.m. keynote, we'll have John Velma join us out of Denmark. And John, as I mentioned, it's holiday there in Denmark, and they do respect their holidays. That's one thing I love about the Scandinavians. But I've spent a lot of time with him in the last couple of years. I visited him in Denmark early this year and working on a project with him in the US. And what you'll see here, this acronym of TWI, I'm not sure how well known it is in the South African context, but for us in the US, it was born out of World War II, training within industry. It was a reaction from the Department of War, realizing that we had to bring up a workforce very quickly, very rapidly, and efficiently during war times. And a lot of those were women, and they did a fantastic job with taking on that manufacturing capability. And there are 4 modules within TWI that are pretty well known. The one is job instruction. And it's how do you do the work? How do you train the work in a very efficient way? And it's a few steps of the process that you follow, and you do it very intentfully, but you realize that it is a quite impactful way to do training and development. And then likewise, it's not just sufficient to train somebody. There is the job methods piece. So that's the next module of how to take the work that you're doing and then improve it. And that goes through the reasons why and really works through the breakdown sheet of understanding each step, and then how do we take that forward and get to a level where we can be doing it more efficiently and effectively. And then I think the neatest story, I would say, is that beyond training a job and improving a job, there was a gap that was noticed of we have a problem with our managers not being able to get the results from their team members. and they were leading with an iron fist at times and not doing it in a psychological safety way, and they were needing to perhaps train that. So that third module is job relations, and that's the interaction again between the team member and their leader, their manager, and how do you have clear communication around problems? How do you work on development in a very mutualistic way? And that is a really fantastic module that's gaining even more traction, as you can imagine, in the current day. And in the fourth piece, they brought in job safety. So those four modules around instruction, methods, relations, and safety are the TWI really core modules that you'll hear from John about how those have been used globally. And he has some great relationships with Danish companies such as Lego. He worked with Lego for many years and helped them expand TWI across their global footprint. And likewise, now they just came off a multi-year engagement with Maersk, so the large shipping line, and did that at several of their ports globally as well, including in Africa. And I'm also working with him with some pharmaceutical companies elsewhere. So as we mentioned, it has a global scale, but it also has a very local application capability, being able to start with these modules in a small way and then build them up incrementally over time. So he'll give us a great keynote on the summit day at 1 p.m. And then likewise, he is going to be sticking around to host a full day workshop on Thursday, the 28th. And from knowing John, he does very well in that setting. He loves the opportunity to kind of step away from the stage and be able to kind of give you a deeper dive of the modules and explain how they can be useful to you and your teams. So excited to have him join us, and look forward to having you help me join him or welcome him when he comes down in a month. Let's keep moving through. I believe we have Dr. Tony Boyson on the call, and thank you for joining us today, Tony. And if you don't mind, give us an overview of yourself and your organization there, and likewise your theme around an A3.
Oh, sorry, thanks. I was just typing on TWI. I'll finish it later. Yeah, sorry. I have a medical background, trained in anesthesiology, which I say is operations management. I just like that quip. Yeah, I practiced medicine for about 10 years, split between South Africa and the UK. And, it sort of struck me. It wasn't, this first world, third world, what do you call it, developing. You had the same problems in healthcare, so it couldn't be the people. It had to be something systems related. Which led me to the MBA. I sort of also trained then under Norman Fall, so operations management again, which I took to, and I did my research with him on lean applications in healthcare. It was around the time actually that he started the Lean Institute in South Africa. So I actually worked with him over a number of years and had external sort of mentorship from the AOTS. I think it's been absorbed somewhere else. Yeah, we had Furuhashi was the assigned mentor. So so there were the first few summits and stuff. So over a number of years, in the early years of LIA, sort of had quite close engagement with that. I suppose just with respect to, I think, to your dad, Michael Sayers, is sort of as much as a lean sort of prophet and fanatic is, we don't all have the luxury of having been immersed in a Toyota setting. So my focus is a lot on, sort of, I suppose, this blended approach of Lean and Six Sigma. Some of it sort of has the medical background in it. So the presentation title, I know that you have, probably that would be it, is, just but using A3. So A3 has always been a constant for myself from the, from the get-go. So shared learning from sharing learning, or vice versa. It'll just did a little typo there. I see. Sorry if I made a mistake. So just what the discussion from my side really would be about is the why behind the blended approach on A3, which integrates really the framework. So I'm not big on the bells and whistles of Six Sigma, but really DMAIC as a framework for me is, it's sort of cut to the chase, and it makes it sort of explicit. Quite often when you look at A3s, you have different formats. For me, DMAIC, and within that then embedded is Lean, which you can use the tools, the principles, the thoughts, and so forth. So it's not so much about Six Sigma and all the heavy stats and stuff in that regard. So it's really the blended approach of the methodologies. The how part to that would be over the years, having started, I did a lot of consulting work, and then there were a lot of blitzes, amongst others, a lot of these with Norman and some of the early LIA proponents, Rose and Anton and so forth. However, sort of transitioning into organization, you'll seldom get that luxury. So, sort of where I've transitioned is intentionally going first a simulation-based approach, but using A3 again. So simulation, where I'll sort of say fake it. It's fairly non-threatening to people as well. And so using simulations, a lot of the 8 wastes, 5S, and so forth. And then the what part is which is the second part, is then sharing a case study, is the make it part, is having sort of taken people through using A3 thought processes. So a series of workshops elsewhere, which I'll explain at that point, is then sort of, sort of the experiential part of using that. The case study that I'll do, I unfortunately, I do not have permissions at my current organization, which is a private sector health organization. They have, concerns on proprietary rights. I did previously do work though in the public sector in the Western Cape. I'm currently in Joburg as well, but I was in the Western Cape. So it's a case study from, and there were several of these sort of, serial case studies. So we advanced over time, but effectively a high volume, high mix sort of scenario in the context of a day hospital, or what we call a community health center. So patients come in for, sort of something acute, and they will either go home or be referred onto into the hospital setting. So that would really be what the case study itself would speak to. I suppose the key takeaways for myself, I say not having been born into Toyota, is, for me is the Lean and Six Sigma. I know it's the Lean Summit, but is Lean and Six Sigma is sort of seeing the best of, that they can complement each other. Lean is to Six Sigma is what Yin is to Yang. You can't have really one, at least in my world. The other one is, I suppose, the current state. Well, I'll call the term the current state is A3 as an iterative process. Sort of the movie. Quite often we see the reports at the sort of at different stage gates, a proposal, an interim report at the end, but we use A3 as a continuous iterative process. But then for me as well, almost the future state, and it's something that I've separately worked on, is beyond sort of specifically, not that obviously these things are not ingrained in lean methodology and lean thinking, but again, Hoshin has been very difficult for people to capture, so I've used it for balanced scorecard deployments. I think they're obviously complementary, but similarly for change management initiatives, having done ADCAR methodology as an example, and then also straight project management. If people have done Project Management Institute, for those who do project management, is sort of using the A3 because the logic behind A3 for me is sort of embeds a lot of, there's sort of similarity, not similarity so much, but parallelities amongst all of these. So yeah, in a summary, that's really what I'd look to talk to. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tony, and excited to hear, and I think it gives credit to Norman Fall and the great work that he's done with the Lean Institute over the years, and in the healthcare setting especially. And we heard from Dr. Greg earlier, and yourself now, Dr. Tony, around some of that application. And I think we'll get a great flavor from you in terms of Lean Six Sigma. You mentioned the project management framework, all the standards and how those really tie in. So you can have the tools and have a very clear understanding of what's expected, but then likewise, you couple that with the people, you couple that with some of the other cultural side, and I think it's truly powerful. So we'll get a great view of all of that from you, it sounds like, in your presentation. But thank you. We're excited to have you join us in November.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Let's keep moving through.
I see Anton has joined.
I did see Anton just join. Welcome, Anton.
Hi there. Hi.
So our next presentation is from a gentleman named Sean Mercer. He also is not able to make it today, and a very good, unique reason. He just had his second child, so he's on paternity leave for a few weeks here. But I did have the pleasure of working with Sean actually a little bit as part of this project, and a great case study around Cape Union Mart Factory's 6-month profit turnaround. And so for those of you that are familiar with Green Thread and poetry, and they make old khaki as well, some great clothing, and they are right on our doorstep there. They're in Pardon Island overlooking the mountain view, and a fantastic factory. There are several hundred people across a few production lines. Sean will give us the specifics, but they were needing to improve, obviously, lead time, efficiency, changeovers, how they did style handovers from headquarters, bringing that into the facility itself. And so he was very deep into that world for actually a couple of years, I should say, and in a 6-month intensive project that they led in order to support that operation. And they've had great results, as I've said, but you'll hear specifically of of what approach was taken, what learnings were had, what mistakes were made, perhaps, but in order to get to this positive outcome that I know the company is very pleased with. So looking forward to having Sean join us, and especially after he's recovered a bit from having his second child. Very good. Next up is John from Gendemark, and I believe you've joined us. And if you don't mind, maybe come on and give us an overview of yourself, the company, and likewise your topic here, effective on-the-job training strategies for frontline workers. And thank you so much. I know we added you late to this mix, but if you don't mind, John, give us a great overview here.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben, for that. I'm actually going to just share a quick slide. I think that's always best. Just 2 or 3 slides as a teaser. So let me just, excuse me for that. You just go here.
We've got it.
Cool. Good to meet you all. Meet you, rather. My name is Jean, Senior Solutions Consultant here at Gendemark. Been through various capacities with this manufacturing technology company. I've helped build the Odin technology platform that obviously focuses on trying to implement lean and trying to implement let's call it on-the-job training at manufacturing companies, both discrete and batch and process manufacturing. It's really supporting on-the-job training for knowledge workers and semi-skilled workers like frontline staff. Let's talk about a technician as well as an operator. So the presentation for me will obviously try and focus on how we provide lean methods and get the value to our clients, and just showcase 1 or 2 success stories as well on how we can really use tech to really make a big impact. Essentially, what we want to gather from the workshop or the little hour pitch there is to actually show how lean methods together with digital augmentation can really make a big impact for our clients and for manufacturing. And then obviously we'll share some of the success stories and lessons learned from our side after doing this for many years. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's the foundational principles that we want to show, that people are central to the production system. We see so much automation happening, but at the end of the day, there's so much people still on the production floor that we have to keep in mind. And if we want to make an impact, it has to be from the bottom up through people. So I'll be talking a bit about that, and then obviously some interesting, let's call it strategies around these work areas that I'm mentioning over here, like maintaining standard maintaining work standards rather in all the areas on the shop floor. Think about assembly and even rework, and obviously maintenance, even tool change, verification and calibration too, right? It's often misunderstood. So all of these let's call it standards, standard work standards can be applied through many areas on the production floor. And so we'll obviously show how using technology can really empower continuous improvement, where the shop floor employees help solve problems themselves and really drives that culture for troubleshooting and problem solving and empowerment. Okay, and then obviously give a sneak peek on some of the tech and the applications of that, and how we're seeing a lot of manufacturers actually using the tech in different ways and to solve real problems. And here's a sneak peek on some of the strategies. Essentially, it's helping technicians with obviously VR in virtual environments, and then we're even to do maintenance SOPs, all right, in a really risk-free environment. And then obviously individual learning paths based on MES data, CMMS data, so that there's micro learning sessions for each of these individual technicians or operators. And last little bit, we can then eventually have a semi-skilled person off the street, train him up within a day. This is Goodwill over here. We can get him really involved into virtual reality training on how to do a set of standard assembly sequences as he's doing over here, learn with that within the day, and then start adding value on the production line as quick as possible, and go through a set of work instructions on the production line, adding value from, like I said, day 1 as quick as possible with digital work instructions guiding him along the way. We then also add all sorts of hardware on top of it, really support the operator. And we see clients really do this well, and make sure that they are error-free in their production, which is pretty amazing when you combine the software and the hardware together. And then we can extend that to computer vision. So clients are really using computer vision technology to support operators during the assembly process. And here's an example of how they're going to pick from the right bin, put the bolting tool in the right place, and then we actually help stop production if they're not in the right place. So interesting technologies like that get deployed to support error-free production. And then all of that data gets personalized, right? So that operator knows exactly where he is performing well, where he's not, and we can obviously provide that information to him personally, and then he can go back into VR training if it's required. So that's a sneak peek of the slides and the strategies. I hope that's impactful for everybody. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Yeah, truly excited to have you join us, and many things to be said on this. But I think when I first got to see the sneak peek that you saw, I was there, last year in August, I think 23, we came through some clothing executives, and I saw that presentation, and it blew my mind. And you realize the linkage of not only the cultural and the people side and showing them respect for when you're first hiring them, bringing them off the street, as we saw the example, but being able to put them into a good system where they feel empowered to be able to go in and add value very quickly and efficiently. It also links in with the TWI framework and the job instruction training and being able to see those in application as well. And really, I think it is the future. One of the more keen memories I had for myself and my learning journey was in Japan. And it was a company that makes healthcare devices, and their workforce was predominantly physically handicapped individuals. And they were leveraging those strengths, and some people would look at it as a weakness, obviously, but they were taking the strengths of the handicapped to be able to put them in a good system with light assist, visual assist, all these different devices that were helping them to do the work. And you say, wow, you can take a portion of the population that perhaps before was underrepresented in the workforce and be able to put them in a position to succeed by having some of these devices at play. So very excited to have you join us, John, for your presentation there.
And just on that, the African population is ripe for such a technology disruption, right? We have many free hand and many a job that is, or many a supply of job that is ready and available to add value on the production line, whether it be a medical device or an electronics component to actual car. So the range of industry use cases are quite extensive, so that we can make a much bigger impact throughout Africa with localizing production in all these areas. So yeah, it's really exciting. Thank you.
Awesome. Very good. And for our final presenter of the day and coming up for the summit, he'll be the 3:30 p.m. keynote. Terry O'Donoghue from Halfway Toyota. He's not able to be with us today due to a family commitment, but he was the COO at Halfway, and or might still be, apologies, and up in Joburg, based there, and spent some time obviously working across the country. Before that, he was with Toyota South Africa and was a leader within that organization. And Terry has such a fantastic story to tell, so I won't do him justice to speak on his behalf for today, but we did put him strategically in this slot just because it's impactful. It tells a story of a long history of working in South Africa and what it really takes to be successful as a leader in this environment. So very excited to have Terry join us. And I know he's near and dear to many of us in the Lean Institute community. All that said, okay, well, we've come to the end of our agenda here for the presenters, and we heard from a good portion of you today. Thank you again for joining us. I think we'll open the floor up if there are any questions while we're here. Otherwise, we can adjourn. But looking through the chat, see a couple of questions that have already been answered around promoting lean culture in the government. Aisha, thank you for answering that. Tony, you gave some color around TWI and how sparse it might be, I guess, in the lexicon for people knowing that and being familiar with it. So we will definitely hope to fill those knowledge gaps with the presentations from John. Anything else too, if you want to type it in here for today or chime in, we can do that. But otherwise, we'll answer them between now and the summit in November. So I'm sure many of you have already registered, and if there's anything we can do to help answer any questions around logistics for the summit itself, we can do that. But as mentioned before, the 26th of November, that Tuesday, will be the full day workshop with Mike Joseas around Toyota culture, building that type of culture in your organization. I'm sure he'll touch on his 4P model of people, process, purpose, and problem solving. And then we'll have a speaker dinner that evening. So all the speakers are invited to that. And then likewise, anybody that would like to join us as a guest, you're welcome to purchase a ticket for that to cover some of the expenses of the meal. But I definitely would love to see you at the speakers dinner on Tuesday evening. That'll be at the waterfront in Cape Town. So beautiful backdrop. Wednesday is the full day summit. That will be at the University of Cape Town Graduate School of Business. So that's Breakwater campus there, right near the waterfront. We'll be in the conference center, so a beautiful venue, particularly at a nice time of year. So we're excited for that. We'll start at 8:30 with a keynote from Mike Joseas. We'll have a bit of an intro from the Lean Institute. Prior to that, you'll hear from Samantha, you'll hear from Seppo and myself. And then likewise, we'll get into the full agenda that you just saw there today. But we don't want you to leave just after the summit. We're offering that full day workshop as well with John Velma on Thursday, the 28th of November, also at the GSB, and a great opportunity to get a deeper dive on some of the concepts that you'll see throughout the presentation. So all that said for today, thank you again for joining us, especially on a Friday afternoon. I hope you enjoy the weekend there in Cape Town, and I look forward to seeing you in November. Oh, very good. Go ahead.
I want to thank you, Ben, and Lean Institute Africa for bringing us together. And I got excited hearing all the speakers, and you've said it a couple of times during it. It links, it works together. So as we heard, we're all coming from the same center and foundation, and the same heart and purpose to drive improvement in people and our businesses and our nonprofits and our organizations. So I'm excited to see you here in November.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all. We will see you soon.